Hello, my name is Ryan Van Bibber, and in this series of videos, I'm going to be showing you the basic layout and functionality of Ableton Live version 10. When you open up Ableton for the first time, you are confronted with this screen, which is the session view window and can look pretty intimidating for a beginner. The first thing we're going to do is switch our view to the arrangement view. You can do this two ways. You can go to the View menu and choose Toggle Arrangement Session View, or you can hit the Tab key. Tab toggles back and forth between the arrangement and the session view. That's a super handy shortcut to have. In the arrangement view window, you can see your tracks area. This is where you will put audio and MIDI tracks, and it has a timeline similar to Pro Tools or Logic or another program like that. There are bars and beats along the top and minutes and seconds along the bottom. On the left-hand side, you have a browser. This browser is very important and useful in Live. There are different categories. For instance, sounds. And in these sounds categories, they are classified by instrument or type, like brass. If I open that up, there are many instrument settings for all different kinds of instruments, but the thing they have in common is that they are all basically a brass sound. There's another category for drums. There's a dedicated category for instruments, and we will go over all of these instruments in detail throughout the course. There are audio effects such as EQ, compression, reverb, delay, things like that. There are MIDI effects, which not every DAW has, but Ableton does, and the MIDI effects include an arpeggiator, chord and scale plugins, and others. There's a category called Max for Live. Now, Max for Live is an object-oriented coding program that enhances and extends Live's abilities to create and design sounds. We're going to get to that later in the course, but just know it's there. Plugins. If you have any third-party audio unit or VST plugins, they will show up here in Ableton Live, provided you have scanned them, and I will show you how to do that later on. Clips are files that include musical information. They could be loops. They could be a lot of different things. They could be MIDI or audio, but all built-in clips show up right here in the clips category. And then samples are here. Now, if you are like me, you have tens of thousands of samples, and it would be crazy to try to search through all of them to find one particular sample. And that's why there is a search bar up at the top. So if I type in kick, then I will get all of my kick samples or anything with kick in the title. Finally, there is an all results button that encompasses all of these categories together. Now in places over here, these are places on your computer or on an external hard drive or wherever you've defined. So this is for packs, which are Ableton Live extensions basically. Your user library, the current project you're working in. I have other user folders here that I've added, and I will show you how to add a folder in a later video. But the browser is very important in Live, and it's definitely worth taking some time to explore. It should also be noted that if you have a search term in your search bar, then it may not show anything in there. If I exit that out and then go back, it will show many more things because that search term is no longer active. Okay, on the right-hand side here, you can see that Live comes preloaded with an initial set of 2 MIDI tracks and 2 audio tracks, and 2 return tracks that automatically have reverb and delay put on them, plus a master track. Additional tracks can be dragged into this area where it says drop files and devices here. You have your basic mixer controls such as volume, this blue bar. Instead of a mute button, you just turn the track off by pressing on the yellow field with the black number in it. There's a solo button. There's a record arm button. There is a pan control. It says C, but it can go to the left. It can go to the right. An interesting thing about the pan control in Ableton, it works a little bit differently. than the controls in other DAWs. So if you want it to be more like a Pro Tools type deal, you can right click and choose split stereo pan mode. And then for a stereo track, you would have a left pan knob and a right pan knob. And if you want to undo that, you can just right click again to stereo pan mode. It comes with built-in sends that go to the return tracks. So if I grab a hold of this and crank it up, I would put more reverb on this track. I would route more of this track signal to this reverb track. And again, we'll cover that in more detail in a later video. If you ever want to set a parameter back to its original value, just double click on it. For the MIDI tracks, you have a MIDI meter here, and once you load up an instrument, there will be additional parameters generated. Now, the bottom of the screen here is where you're going to see your instruments, your audio effects, your MIDI effects. You'll see your audio and MIDI clips here. You can edit audio, you can edit MIDI, and again, we'll be looking at those in more detail in another video. This box over here is the info view. It is incredibly helpful. If you mouse over an item in Live, it will tell you what that thing is in the info view window. So here's the track name. If I go here, it says track volume, track pan. So if you're not sure of what a particular button or control is when you look at Live, make sure you have this info view open. You can open and close views with these triangles, or by going to the View menu and choosing to hide or show those items. Along the top of the arrangement view here, you have some MIDI controls such as tempo, and you can click and drag your tempo, or you can type directly into it. You can also tap this tap button to generate a tempo. You can adjust your meter here, and you can turn the metronome on and off with this button. If you click on the arrow next to it, you can select a count in, adjust your sound, and rhythm. The button next to the metronome defines how Ableton plays new clips. Does it wait until one bar, the next bar shows up? Does it wait for 2 bars? Does it wait for 4 bars? Or does it launch as soon as you click the clip? Most of the time, I leave this to 1 bar. Here is your play marker indicator, play, stop, record buttons. These are some automation and MIDI overdub buttons that we'll get to later. Here are some loop controls, and we'll go into more depth on those in a later video as well. Finally, in this screen, we have the pencil tool, which you can turn on and off by clicking on it. The computer MIDI keyboard button, which allows you to use your typing keyboard as a MIDI keyboard when enabled. And key mapping and MIDI mapping buttons that again we will get to in a later video in more depth. If I hit the tab key, I'm in session view. Now session view is a whole other topic, but just know that each one of these rectangles is called a clip slot, and you can load audio and MIDI clips in these two and mix and match them without regard for a timeline sequence. In this view, we also have a traditional mixer type view here with the long fader, the pan knob. You can turn tracks off again by clicking the yellow button with the black number, and solo and record buttons are also here. So that's the basic layout of Live, and in this series of videos I'm going to show you how to unlock Live's potential in a variety of ways.